just a little bit of an overview of the situation here. I enlisted in the Marine Corps back on February 22nd, 2005, and I was eventually discharged after approximately 7 years, January 3rd of 2012. Characterization of service was other than honorable. I served one tour of duty over in Iraq, 2007. There's many circumstances. The focus of this, just briefly, is my experience in which I brought to attention some impropriety that was going on within my command. There was a lot of abuse as it pertains to junior Marines. There was a lot of covering up of facts in investigations, and there was a lot of blind eyes that were turned, like when I attempted to bring attention through the proper chain of command. Right here in this binder, which I'd like to go ahead and pass around if anybody's interested in seeing, is just an overview of me. Just a quick overview of some of the paperwork for the investigation that I initiated. This is just kind of goes to sort of lend credibility to some of the statements I intend to make here. Situation began, like early on. The Marine Corps has kind of an interesting dynamic. It's a very authoritarian organization, to say the least. Very, very structured, very, very rigid, and there's very little interpretation. As such, early on, going through recruit training, you're told what to do, how to do it, and under what circumstances. And there's only 3 appropriate responses: yes, sir, no, sir, and aye, sir, acknowledging the order that was given. So early on, we experienced, obviously, they use sleep deprivation, hunger, extreme stress as conditioning tools to prepare us for the rigors of combat. So that, in my opinion, was, later looking back in retrospect, just part of the protocol. Where I started to come into conflict with that was later on when I was going through formal schools. Often there was belittling, shaming among your peers for minor infractions. Some of these infractions were even fabricated to ostracize and to belittle members who, for other reasons, didn't fit the status quo, didn't subscribe to the same ideas, and would put up any sort of objections to impropriety. I happen to be one of those individuals. As you can see, I really, well, maybe you don't know me, and this is where we're making our introduction here. But as a Lance Corporal in E3 in the Marine Corps, it was just sort of understood, that there was a proper pecking order, and that you had to come to rate certain privileges and certain responsibilities. So initially in the beginning, I didn't put up too much resistance. I sort of went with the flow with the understanding that, if you're not first and you're not last and you don't volunteer to do anything, and you just go with that flow, then you won't get messed with, more or less. As is not the case. Later on, against the objections of my senior leadership, I got promoted. Not just once, but twice. So coming back in November 1st, 2010, I was sent back to Bravo Company, which falls under the 3rd Assault Amphibian Battalion, 1st Marine Division, Camp Pendleton. And I was functioning as a crew chief for a section of amphibious assault vehicles. There were many things that my command was encouraging me to do, such as denying of privileges. Often, Marines would be allocated a certain amount of time to execute certain duties, such as getting chow. The command, in order to create downward pressure and discontent within the ranks, and to, sort of, in my opinion, it was straight abusive because it went against Marine Corps protocol, would put time standards that were completely unreasonable, like 20 minutes to go to the chow hall, grab a bag of chow, come down to the ramp, eat that food, and then quickly resume work. Very, very rigid, very, very authoritarian. Oftentimes, like on what they traditionally call field day, which was conducted every Thursday, I'm sure that hasn't changed, is that often we were instructed to keep Marines up into the early morning hours, often 3 a.m., 4 a.m., to turn around and perform PT at 5:30 in the morning. Now, mind you, my job and my function was an amphibious assault crew chief. So I'm responsible for a section of vehicles. Each vehicle weighs in excess of 27 tons, fully up armored. Often these Marines were, extremely tired, were not able to perform their functions. And often than not, I mean, it created a genuine safety hazard. And these are things that, I initially brought up through my chain of command. I was quickly rebuked, and I quickly found myself on the spotlight. I went through outside sources such as the chaplain. I requested mass, and to each time, I was dismissed in various forms and functions. The chaplain initially did bring it to the attention of the command, the senior leadership within the battalion. It was later deemed to be unfounded, and at that point, I initiated a command investigation with the IG. At that time, initially I never received a reply. I started to become extremely upset. I was having issues of my own with drinking, abusing prescription pain medication, and I was having domestic troubles. Till on the evening of April 9th, 2011, I assaulted an individual. I consequently ended up killing them. I was later sent to Point Loma, which is a rehabilitation facility for substance abuse, PTSD, and other conditions. It was later deemed that I was experiencing symptoms related to combat-related PTSD by counseling. I bring this to your attention because I was, in fact, court-martialed. There are things that I did that were wrong, and I take ownership of that. I would like to point out, too, that I went about a vigorous course of correction, which I'm pursuing today, counseling, sobriety, and other things. The thing about it is, going back, is that as I continued to push the investigation, more often than not, things were dismissed, replies were never given, and often, I eventually took it to Congress. As you can see in the documents, they were, in fact, denied. This is an ongoing thing because even to this day, I intend to, request for an upgrade of discharge with the end state of being able to maybe procure employment through, if not the VA, some other facility for the purpose of doing outreach with veterans. I originally came to become aware of Veterans for Peace. I was doing some day labor, and I was up around Poway, and I forget where it was, but there's the General Atomics facility over there, and I saw you folks out there picketing, and I thought to myself, this is going to be interesting. So that's how that kind of came to be, and then after doing a little bit of reading online, and I came to meet Jack here over at the Earth Day Fair. This is sort of what kind of sparked interest. I wouldn't ever dare walk into somebody's meeting, uninvited. So I appreciate the opportunity to come here this evening and share that with you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, we do. Thank you.
Some non-judicial proceedings that occurred as a result of some members within my own rank, my peers, where they were NJP, reduction in rank, restriction as a result thereof. I'm not aware of anything that happened with my senior leadership. I think that was kept very quiet, and I never really tried to utilize the back channels to find out what the end state of that was. So as far as I know, there were no repercussions.
What was happening to the troops who were being picked on? That's what you're talking about, right? They got picked on for minor things.
Right. Well, often than not, certain individuals were targeted for having attitudes that were not in compliance with certain ideas that were going on there. So there were a couple instances in which their personal property was tampered with. There were certain incidences where they were accused of not being in possession of their weapon when they would, set it aside, like during chow or whatever the case may be, like during a training op. So, maybe to get a little bit more specific, there was an incident that I recall quite clearly where one of my peers actually instructed one of the junior Marines to dig his own grave. I think there was a symbolic gesture behind that, but in effect too, he told him to lay in his own grave, and there were other members, his peers, as well as my own peers at that time, because I was an NCO, that were kicking dirt over him. So, in my opinion, I mean, that's completely unacceptable. And I think if this would have been known to the general public, people overwhelmingly would have viewed that as being sort of absurd and just inappropriate. I mean, that doesn't build small unit cohesion or build morale. I mean, that is completely, it's abusive is what it is. And under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that would be defined as hazing. Anybody else?
Yeah, Sean. You talked about depriving people of sleep and things like that, and some of the other incidents that you talk about. I mean, at any time did the Marine Corps or the commanders, whoever's responsible for that, explain the rationale for doing that? It seems like it would be counterproductive to anything, like you were talking about this very expensive equipment, and you have to have a couple of hours sleep, you have to operate it. What did they believe they would gain from displaying that kind of behavior against these people who were trying to do their job?
Well, that's a good question here. What was the end state? I don't know. I know that wouldn't have stood in agreement with the commander's end state, with the CO's end state. That would have been completely incongruent. The thing about it is, and it would be speculation on my part to even guess why it was, but going under that assumption there, what was it? It's to exert dominance over the situation, to break somebody between the ears, to be able to, exert power and control. I understand that there's the balance between good order and discipline, but there's also a line where it becomes abusive, and completely counterintuitive. And that's something that I simply just didn't stand for. I mean, and not only did I, in this case, initiate the investigation, I made no attempt to remain anonymous about it. I was very open with my command about what I did, and I knew that was going to basically signal the end of my experience in the Marine Corps. And to that end, I have absolutely no regrets, because I would rather regret something I did than something I didn't do, and live with the shame of being, doing that crap, for lack of a better word.
Thank you. I'm sure there's lots of E1s, E2s, and E3s that are grateful.
Yeah, okay, but to the opposite end, maybe this is, I'm making the assumption that I'm being a troop hugger, but I mean, that's just not the case. I mean, there was a very, very, very clear line that was, broken, and the thing about it is that I remember seeing it as I was coming through the ranks, and I saw this cycle of abuse being perpetuated, with my peers, and all of that crap was learned, and that's just not something I was going to participate in. Yes?
I'm a recovering alcoholic also, and I was just curious as to the fact that you are maintaining your sobriety. Is there any history that says that will help you a lot in getting this discharge changed? To be able to take that and say, this is my history, this is what I'm clean and sober.
Well, I mean, the fact that I can actually back up my claim of sobriety with work that I've been doing at the VA, an outpatient treatment program, I think that may help it. However, I don't really have any expectations. All I can do is put my best out there. If it gets accepted, very well, and if not,
So you have an attorney and all that?
No, I need to actually kind of investigate that angle. That's
Weren't
not.
there people that talked down at the Peace Resource Center coffee house people?
Oh, yeah, they did counseling for discharge upgrades.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so we need to put him in touch with.
Yeah.
There's people around town that do that. I don't know where they are, but we can look for them.
We can find them.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, all right.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Your experiences sound like some of mine in basic training particularly. One writer wrote, a lot of the military is just chicken shit, and he said it's not elegant like bullshit or elephant shit, it's petty.
Yeah.
But just to be nasty.
Yeah,
Right,
usually that stops at boot camp. I mean, then you get into units,
Not
and you build cohesion.
Yeah, not necessarily though. I mean, ideally you would want that. You want a unit that's cohesive, but you still see a lot of chicken shit around.
Yeah.
People join the military for very many reasons. Some of them just like to push people around.
Right.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you-